So today, a federal appeals court upheld Florida's controversial Docs versus Glocks bill. The law restricts what doctors can discuss about guns with their patients. Supporters say doctors might turn away patients who own guns, but critics argue physicians need to know what's in a patient's home so they can offer safety advice. The ruling overturned a previous decision that had blocked the state from enforcing the law.
Medical professionals are charged with a few simple tasks in their profession. First and foremost, to uphold an ethical aim to treat the patient with care, concern, and the best medical advice they can provide. They also find themselves needing to know more about their patients in order to provide counsel that would keep them and their families safe. So it wouldn't seem to many to be that big of a deal, nor a major intrusion into someone's personal life, to ask about weapons in the home, especially considering accidents with children in the home. However, the state of Florida sees it differently. Doctors are now in a precarious position. Let's talk about that and welcome into MidPoint from the pro-gun side. He is the chief instructor of the South Florida Gun School and a member of the NRA. Bob Harvey joins us on the set. Thank you, Bob. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Ed.
Also, let us now welcome in via Skype the staff attorney for smartgunlaws.org in San Diego, California. Allison Anderman joins us. Allison, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. And we're in San Francisco, the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence.
I'm glad you said that. I had San Diego, and believe me, I've been there. I know there's a huge difference between San Diego and San Francisco, and it's more than just a few hours up the PCH. Thank you very much. Bob, I'm going to start with you here. What's so wrong with a doctor asking and being concerned about the welfare of a child to say, do you have a gun in your home?
If it were only about the welfare of a child, then I wouldn't have a problem. But it's more than that. First off, this law does not stop doctors from asking patients about guns in the home. What it does, and anybody that's read this law, it's very specific on what it covers. The doctor cannot document it. They can't refuse to service someone for medical because they have a gun in the home. It stops insurance companies from not reimbursing because of a gun in the home. People need to read this law before they start saying it's about the children, because it's not.
Then why are doctors so concerned and backing off it right now? Doctors don't even want to approach this now because they're afraid.
Well, the AMA and the American Pediatric Society or Association, if you go on their website, they have on their front page, they have an advocacy page to where the money goes. If they were so concerned about those children in the home, on the American Pediatric page, if you take a look at it, there are 6 different specific letters sent out about gun control and 1 about child mental health. It would seem to me that they should spend their time and their money where it is actually would help the child.
All right, Allison, I'm going to turn to you next here. I asked the same question because doctors are afraid now to bring this up with any of their patients. What's so wrong about asking?
Absolutely nothing is wrong with asking, nor should it be. But unfortunately, this court decision has instructed that doctors can no longer ask unless they believe that it is specifically relevant to a patient's well-being. And the fact of the matter is that gun ownership is always relevant to a child's well-being, just like whether or not you have a swimming pool. I'm a parent. My children's pediatrician asks me a whole host of questions about things that could potentially present a very big risk to my child, like whether or not we have a swimming pool, whether or not heavy furniture is attached to the walls. And the fact of the matter is that gun violence is a public health epidemic, and doctors are in the best position to help us address this. At the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, we track the laws in all 50 states on gun issues, and we know that states like Florida with very weak gun laws have much higher levels of gun violence, and importantly, states where there is a lot of gun ownership have a 9 times greater rate of unintentional shooting deaths, and children are particularly at risk. 89% of unintentional shootings of children occur in the home. So this is something that doctor is always relevant to the health of a child.
Allison, your statement is blatantly false. Blatantly false.
Tell us how and why.
Look in Chicago with the strongest gun laws in the country up until this past year. There are more children killed with guns in the streets there than anywhere in the country. So your statement about Florida is blatantly false.
That's incorrect. I mean,
it is not incorrect.
Chicago does have a gun violence epidemic, and we know that despite Chicago's strong gun laws, many of the guns recovered in crimes come from states neighboring Illinois that have very weak gun laws.
Okay, but let's bring this back down here, because I understand the discussion here between Chicago, Florida. Let's not get into stats. Let's keep it right where it's supposed to be here. And this is doctors asking and doctors caring about the kids that are involved here. Bob makes a point, and others have made a point, saying that you can ask, but you can't write it down anywhere. There is a real fear that it's going to be written down somewhere, that it's going to go on a record. There was even some people who were concerned that doctors were making records that would wind up in federal hands about people who had weapons, who legally had weapons. So isn't that a concern in all this?
Yes.
Well, wait a minute. Hang on a sec. Allison, it's to you.
Well, the 11th Circuit said that doctors can no longer ask, or they can be subject, unless they have a very specific, relevant reason for asking. And that puts such a chilling effect on the doctor-patient relationship, because one of the penalties of even discussing this, if it isn't considered relevant, is that the doctor could lose their license. And you know as well as I do how hard doctors work to earn their licenses. And if the threat is that I may lose my medical license, I'm not going to say anything about guns.
Well, she brings up a good point about licenses. That's what a lot of doctors are concerned about.
Allison, let me ask you a question. Why would they have to ask? Give me just a good reason why they have to ask.
Because children find loaded weapons in the home and shoot themselves and shoot other children all the time. We hear news stories every day about children who are finding loaded weapons in the home and shooting and killing their siblings.
Okay, we get that. We're short on time. Bob, answer, please.
Okay. They also drown in pools. They don't talk to them about pools. But
they
first
do.
off,
they
the doctors' main complaint on this whole deal is that they want to teach gun safety. They want to talk about gun safety. They're not qualified. It's medical malpractice. If I, as a firearms instructor, started to do brain surgery, that would be medical malpractice. For them to try to teach a family about guns, they're better off assuming that there's a gun in every home.
Isn't it also, no, Allison, please make a quick answer. I have one more point to make. Go ahead.
Actually, Florida has a gun safety, gun storage law explicitly to protect children, and doctors need to be able to tell their the parents of their patients that if you have a gun in the home, you need to make sure that it is stored properly so that your children cannot access it and kill themselves. And actually, I am a parent, and my pediatrician did ask me if I have a swimming pool, and if so, I needed to take preventative measures to make sure that my children don't get in the pool, like putting up a fence. That's not telling anybody about how to operate a gun, and that's just a misstatement of this issue.
And it would seem a lot of doctors are concerned about this issue when it comes down to weapons itself. We recently had an issue in Philadelphia where a doctor actually fired his weapon that he legally held at a psychiatric patient who had attacked him. So doctors themselves are aware of what's happening here. It's not as if doctors are anti-gun.
That's incorrect. The American Medical Association, just as Allison's organization, is a anti-gun organization.
But the doctors themselves I'm speaking about.
The doctors themselves, when I was growing up, we had doctors that were NRA instructors. So to have them talk about gun safety, great. But the doctors that are there today, that's not the case. That's not the AMA's case that's suing to have this overturned. That's not their case. It is an agenda.
Allison, have we gotten to a point then where this needs to be, in your opinion, a national debate? And not only that, but doctors everywhere need to have that ability to be able to ask. 15 seconds.
Absolutely. Doctors everywhere need to be able to ask and counsel the parents of children and people in general, people who are at risk of depression, that there are risks associated with having guns in the home. And we are not an anti-gun organization. We are an organization dedicated to reducing gun violence, and that means promoting sensible policies and sensible regulations regarding guns.
Okay.
And that means
15 seconds into you.
Exactly. Typical anti-gun banner. Sensible, logical. It's for the children. I could write this script. If the minute that the American Medical Association decides on spending more money on mental health care and spending their time on that, we're going to save more children.
All right, we're going to have to end it there. Bob, it's always a pleasure. Allison, thank you so much for joining us. Again, as we have just pointed out here, this is a debate that is going to go on for some time here, but we thank you for your opinions as well. We'll be in touch and make sure we mention San Francisco next time.
Thank you very much.
All right,
for
thank
having
you.
me.
Bob, thank you
Allison.
so much for being here as well. Always a pleasure, my friend. All right, later on this hour, politicians needing to make a hard call about where they stand on medical marijuana. Next up, travel with us, if you will, to the magical place called Outland. It's all next right here on MidPoint.